Hey gang, Jesse here at EC Auto Repair. So we're working on this GMC. I believe it's a Denali or Yukon, something like that. It's a GMC SUV, full size. So this particular vehicle has 207,000 miles on it. And so question becomes, then how do I go from 200,000 miles to 300,000 miles? It's a great question. And honestly, with the price, like if we was to go and replace this vehicle brand new at the dealership and we bought a 2026 model, I don't even know what those vehicles are running right now, but I'm going to estimate that it would cost about 80 grand to 100 grand to replace this vehicle with all the accessories that this one's got on it. So it doesn't really make sense at this stage in the game to go sign up for 96 months worth of payments at $750, $800 a piece. To do 800, let's just do easy math, $800 a month for the next 8 years. Seems like some very expensive transportation, right? So how do you get the maximum out of your vehicle? Great question. I'm so glad you asked. Step one, doing great oil changes, right? And like literally just paying attention to the oil change sticker. The reminder that is on the dash is, they use different readings to read those. And let me just put that over there, and let's just go with the mileage reading that's on the sticker, right? We sell a lot of the BG oil changes. We run the BG oil with the BG 3-part kit. That's a 12,000, according to BG, that's a 12,500 mile service. That's all I run in my vehicles. We do the oil changes every 12,000 miles, right? And I have a fleet of rental vehicles. And so these vehicles get rode hard. They get driven a lot. Like for instance, I'll give you a for instance, one of my cars left here yesterday. And it went to Wyoming, right? So they're getting driven all over the United States. But we've had very, very good results, not even luck. We've had good results by running a premium oil with a premium 3-part kit in it, right? That being said, let's start there, okay? There's also other maintenance services that can be done whenever they're supposed to be done. For instance, like a coolant system flush every 30,000 miles, transmission service every 30,000 miles. If it's a GDI vehicle, doing the intake service every 15,000 miles. But basically any fluid that's in the car should literally be serviced every 30,000 miles, right? Because let's be real, let's go back a few years, or a lot of years, however many years you want it to be, to when you was in high school and you was in physics class or science class. One of the things that we learned in those classes was that fluids, the molecular value in fluid always breaks down. Now, whenever you go into your owner's manual, whether it's a Chrysler, Chevy, Toyota, it doesn't even matter. Whenever you go into your owner's manual, there's often intervals for doing services, and it's like normal conditions, and then there's a list that says severe duty. So what is severe duty? Severe duty is such a broad term, but it has to do with temperature, it has to do with heat, which is also temperature, it has to be with dirt, it has to do with the conditions that it's being driven in. Are you driving it on dirt roads? Are you driving it on the highway? Is it all highway miles? Is it a bunch of starting and stopping? Or is it just one start a day and you're driving 500 or 600 miles in one whack? Exactly what is it? So more often than not, what we find is vehicles, especially like this, could actually qualify as being severe duty. They're running all over the place. They're generally pulling loads, pulling a boat, pulling whatever. So these services should not be skipped on, right? And so literally just put it into your calendar. You know, the nice thing about doing the BG oil changes, that 12,000 mile service, most people drive 15,000 miles a year on average. In the United States, most people drive 15,000 miles. So for us in rural Oklahoma, we're going to drive way more than that, right? But for others, they're going to drive less than that. So you do a service like that, you're doing one oil change a year, right? You can literally put that in your Google calendar and just remember, hey, every March I'm going to go in, I'm going to do an oil service, do a tire rotation, and do all the things, right? The other thing to get the maximum life, so step one, just so we're keeping up, step one, I'm going to take care of the maintenance, right? And I'm going to be careful where I choose my information. These sealed transmissions, some of the manufacturers are going to say it's a sealed transmission, it never needs service, it's a transmission for life, right? What does that mean? That fluid is good for the life of the transmission, right? There is no such thing as a lifetime fluid, right? The fluid, the molecular value of the fluid will break down. There is a service procedure to be able to exchange that fluid, right? To maintain the lifetime of that transmission, let's go ahead and do the service intervals every 30,000 miles, right? Some people won't agree with that. That's okay. You do you. I'll do me. But I know that the customers that are allowing us to serve them in that capacity, that are allowing us to service their vehicles and maintain them when they're supposed to, they're getting great results out of their vehicles. They're sending us thank you cards and they're saying, we really appreciate what you're doing for us. Okay, great. So step one, maintenance, right? Step two, you got a check engine light come on. That does not necessarily mean, as I joke around, that you hop out of the car, you pop the hood and make sure the engine's still there. That's not what that means, right? It could, I guess, but you know, more often than not, you're going to find the engine still there. And guess what? If you find out the engine is still not underneath the hood, then you've got bigger problems than just the check engine light being on, okay? Great. But in all seriousness, if the check engine light comes on, right, it could be something simple that's non-consequential. And what I mean by something simple that's non-consequential is like an emissions code saying that you've got a large evaporative emissions leak. Sometimes the check engine light will pop and that code will come up because you left the vehicle running while you're putting fuel in it. So when you open up the gas cap, it detected a large leak. More often than not, it's smart enough that it resets and it knows that that was just something that happened and it don't reset the light or don't turn on the light. But I have seen that very situation where it did trigger the light, right? So that would be a non-consequential check engine light, right? But there's a lot of other engine lights that can come on. So think of your check engine light as a babysitter. Your check engine light is tasked with watching all the systems in the car. The brake system, the engine system, the transmission system. Like there's so many different components that it's watching, right? And it watches, and all these sensors are sending signals to the computers. The computers are sending signals to the ECM. The ECM is processing the data and saying, okay, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, right? And the check engine light is sitting there in the ECM and it's paying attention to all this thing. Then all of a sudden it gets a signal from a component. Let's just say maybe a number one cylinder or number two cylinder, the ignition coil starts failing or the injector starts failing, right? And it starts misfiring, right? Well, there's a certain number of misfires that are allowed to be okay, right? But when it starts exceeding that misfire threshold, then it sends a signal to the ECM. Hey, we've got a problem. Cylinder number one, we've got misfire. Caution, caution, caution. Check engine light's going to look at that for a little bit. Okay, is this a real problem? Is this a real problem? Is this a real problem? It detects that, okay, we've still got problems. This is still operating out of range, and then it'll pop the check engine light. Now, something like this, you might detect that the engine doesn't have as much power. You might detect that, you know, it's not running as smoothly as it should. Maybe you open the hood and the engine's vibrating a little bit. There could be different things, but I've also seen misfires happen, and you could never detect it by losing power. You could never detect it by looking at the engine or feeling the engine, right? It was literally so many small misfires that it couldn't burn the fuel efficiently and it couldn't produce power effectively. However, you can never detect it without the proper equipment, right? So the check engine light is going to monitor those things. So my point is, whenever something like that comes up, there's a reason the check engine light comes on. It doesn't come on so that it can drain your pocketbook. It doesn't come on to be an annoyance to you. It comes on to tell you, listen, I'm sick. I need a little bit of help, right? Maybe it just needs a vitamin, right? Literally, maybe it just needs something small. Maybe it needs something big. Kind of like our human bodies, right? Like, how does a person know when they're not feeling well, right? How do they begin to know whenever their blood sugar's off, right? How do they begin to know whenever they're dehydrated? How do they begin to know when they're tired, right? There's a few little just subtle things that, hey, I'm starting to get a little bit lightheaded. I'm starting getting a little bit dizzy, right? Well, maybe my blood sugar's out of whack, right? And so go eat something and all of a sudden I feel better, right? Check engine light does that for us. It's the subtle thing that says, hey, got something that needs some attention over here. Why don't you take care of me, right? So we want to do that. Hey, look, Snap-on's over here delivering a toolbox. What we got going on here? Somebody's getting a new toy. All right. You want to show them the new toy? Show them the new toy. My guys investing in the future. Being great, doing all the great things. So, okay. Number 3. So we've covered maintenance. We covered the check engine light, right? So if we can condense this down to 3 things, we should be able to remember 1, 2, 3, right? Maybe we'll come up with, a name where we can remember it. But number 3, noises. If your vehicle begins to make an abnormal noise, like most of us are going to be very familiar with what a brake noise is, right? And brakes sometimes make noise whenever there's moisture on them, but brakes also squeal a really high-pitched, just excruciating noise to the ear, shrill, whenever they're wore down to the brake pad or to the wear pads on the brakes, right? So if you hear something like that, you don't want to just keep driving it and saying, "Oh, it's just brakes, no big deal," right? The more you drive it, the more wear and tear you're going to do. We've seen some that could have actually started with just a pad and a rotor. They kept driving it. All of a sudden now we need to do a caliper. And now this repair bill has actually doubled because they just ignored the noises, right? So you start hearing abnormal noises, right? You start hearing like a roar a constant roar, especially when consistent with speeding up or slowing down. Maybe you've got a wheel bearing going on, or maybe there's a powertrain issue or something like that, right? So just pay attention, just be aware of your surroundings, and you've driven, especially if it's your vehicle, you've driven enough that you know what normal sounds like, how it's supposed to sound when everything's like it's supposed to be, and then you also know, you can begin to notice whenever it doesn't sound great. And then that's 3 things. So we're going to do maintenance, we're going to do check engine light, and we're going to do noises, right? And we're going to throw in a bonus round, number 4. Number 4, steering and suspension. Steering and suspension can generally make a clanking noise. It can make different noises, right? So steering and suspension is different in the fact that it controls how the vehicle rides. So not only are you going to hear noises, but your braking distance. So shocks and struts that are wore out, it literally takes longer to stop a vehicle when those are wore out than it does with ones that are working like they're supposed to. Shocks and struts generally should be changed about every 75,000 miles. The shocks and struts have a job of holding the tire down on the pavement, making sure the ride stays smooth, making sure the ride stays stable, and most of all, maintaining control of the vehicle, right? So we're going to want to make sure that we pay attention to stability. So have you ever driven down the interstate and you maybe go to pass somebody and you can look at one of their tires, especially on the rear, and maybe the tire's just bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down just really, really quickly. And I see this all the time on the interstate. That's indication of a shock or a strut that's completely blowed out and it's not even doing its job. So therefore, whenever they're driving, they don't have the same control of the vehicle as they used to. They don't have the same braking control. And it's very hard on those components too, because it's just bouncing up and down all the time, right? So it could be a failed suspension part, or it could be a knot on a tire and a failed tire, right? And then lastly, so we're not going to do 3 things, we're going to do 5 things, because we have 5 fingers and 5 things are easier to remember than 3 things. So we're going to do 5 things. Next thing is check your tires. Make sure that we ain't got no weather cracks, make sure we ain't got no knots, make sure that they're wearing the same. See, look, this tire got lots of tread depth, right? The tread depth is the same on this side as it is on this side, right? That's a great thing, right? We had a vehicle in here yesterday, and it was completely wore down. There was no tread depth at all on the inside here, and out here was a brand new tire, right? So you can literally just look at that. If you got abnormal wear, then there's a problem with a suspension component, front end alignment, something like that. There's something that's causing that to wear abnormally, right? But you don't want to just keep driving it and ignore it. Let's literally just take care of the problem while it's small before it becomes a bigger problem with bigger components, and more components need to be replaced, right? So 5 things, right? Maintenance, check engine light, noises, right? And then suspensions and struts and tires. Hope this helps. In fact, I know it helped. I'll see you in the next video.